Republic of Cyprus comprises the southern two-thirds of this Mediterranean island, about the size of Puerto Rico. The northern third has been occupied by Turkey since 1974. From our northern stay in Girne, we hired a car to travel about 2 hours southwest to Paphos, crossing the border at the divided capital of Nicosia. The Paphos district covers the whole southwest of the island. Its capital city is the fifth largest on the island. Our home for the month was in a suburban apartment complex with a beautiful pool that was always too cold for us to swim in. The lot across from our building was full of citrus and other trees. The oranges were sour, but were great as free lemon substitutes. Our neighborhood was residential, with lots of new construction and good walkability. The nearby Acropolis Restaurant was a wonderful mom-and-pop place with delicious traditional food and wine, including cured smoked pork loins that we bought the day that they were ready for sale. There were several small groceries, including a new Chinese market and even 2 Filipino mini-marts. The larger grocery stores were a longer walk or a short bus ride away. The bus network was just okay. Centered around northern and southern hub stations, but only one route was convenient for us, and it only ran every hour, so we usually just walked. Our apartment was very close to downtown Paphos, which had beautiful open public areas and parks. Unfortunately, very few people ever seemed to be there, and most of the shops were closed or completely abandoned. We were excited to see the municipal market, our usual go-to place in most cities for fresh produce. But very few shops of any kind were open, and the farmers market section hadn't been around for over 2 years. But one thing the downtown did have was a beautiful overlook view of the city and Mediterranean. The port area was much more lively. The shops and restaurants along the wide promenade were all open and most had customers. And of course, the water was a big reason that people come here. Of course, there are many Greek Orthodox churches in Paphos, from the larger, more modern buildings to small chapels like this one, carved out of limestone caves. One of the oldest and probably the most famous church in Paphos is the Hagia Kyriaki, built under the Crusader Kingdom of Cyprus in 1540 CE. This church is surrounded by the ruins of a much larger Byzantine cathedral that was built in the 4th century. The site itself dates back even farther, to the earliest days of Christianity. From the Acts of the Apostles, St. Paul visited Paphos on his first missionary journey in 44 CE. Prior to Paphos, he preached to fellow Jews using his birth name of Saul. In Paphos, he converted the Roman proconsul, a major achievement, and Romanized his name to Paulus or Paul, so he could better preach to Roman citizens. By tradition, this pillar on the church grounds is where Paul was flogged before he converted the proconsul. Today, Hagia Kyriaki is home to the Paphos Catholic and Anglican communities, with service schedules for both. The Orthodox bishopric and cathedral are located up in Old Town. A memorial sits beside the bishop's office, displaying Greek and Cypriot flags, and dedicated to the Cypriot clergy who were executed in 1821 by the Ottomans for supporting the Greek War for Independence. Greek is the official language of Cyprus, and even though Cypriot independence came 100 years later, Greek nationalism is very strong here, Greek Independence Day is a national holiday, and Greek flags are flown on Cyprus National Day. The 300-year history of Ottoman Cyprus is muted here, and the only evidence we saw were 2 Ottoman baths that were closed to visitors. The lands of the Paphos district have been inhabited for at least 10,000 years. And the first Paphos settlement is around 3,500 years old to the southeast of the modern city. The legend of its origin goes back to one of the oldest in Greek mythology. The fertility goddess Aphrodite was supposedly born from the sea spray that formed around this craggy rock. The city grew as a major center of Aphrodite's cult, and Aphrodite's rock is just off the highway. Now a popular destination for locals and tourists to get some sun, listen to the waves, and enjoy the sea. The larger Rock of the Roman is right on the shore. And of course I had to climb it, which was fun and pretty easy, and totally worth it as it gives an unbeatable vantage point. Apparently, Aphrodite spent a lot of time in Cyprus. The baths of Aphrodite to the north were one of her favorite spots, and where she met her lover Adonis. The nearby Aphrodite and Adonis nature trails take you up over the craggy rocks and through the trees to more breathtaking overlooks of the Mediterranean. And there's also plenty of grazing for the local goats. The craggy white rock of the coast is primarily limestone. Eroded over the millennia by wind and waves, there are some dramatic formations just north of Paphos. The White Cliffs' chalky ledges and niches are perfect and popular spots for swimmers and sunbathers. A short walk or drive away, sections of the rock have been carved into shallow sea caves, which are popular with swimmers and boaters. But there was no way that we were getting into the cold April water to get a closer look. The rocks can also be hazardous, especially during a storm, as the Edro 3 found out in 2011. There are a few cliffside restaurants and cafes which are worth a visit, especially to catch the sunset. Most coastal spots in Paphos are rocky, but Coral Bay, between Paphos and the sea caves, has a wide sandy beach and decent free facilities. They were perfect for a seaside afternoon. In the 4th century BCE, Nea Paphos, or New Paphos, was founded where Paphos Harbor is today. And under Alexander the Great's general Ptolemy I, ruling from Egypt, it was made the capital of Cyprus. Their wealthy citizens were buried north of the city, in the misnamed Tomb of the Kings UNESCO World Heritage Site. The grand tombs for nobles and wealthy merchants were dug into the limestone to follow the practices of the Egyptian Ptolemies, who were themselves emulating the ancient Egyptians. The Nea Paphos Archaeological Site, also a UNESCO World Heritage Site, mostly contains ruins from the Romans, who annexed Cyprus in 58 BCE, and contains many elements common in most Greco-Roman cities, such as the Odeon Theater and adjacent Agora Marketplace. But it's the ruins of the magnificent Roman villas that set Nea Paphos Archaeological Site apart from the rest. They're mostly out in the open, and you can walk down the same column-lined and mosaic-lane pathways that the Romans and Byzantines once trod. At the end of the site closest to the sea, the Villa of Theseus is the largest excavated ancient building in Cyprus. covering 120 meters by 80 meters and comprising 100 rooms. It was a massive structure and the home to Roman proconsuls when Roman Paphos was at its peak. Mosaic floors are in almost every room. Geometric or pictorial, they're incredible. But the highlight of the villa is the spectacular round mosaic depicting a scene from Greek mythology where Theseus battles the bull-headed Minotaur of Crete. The adjacent house of Ion is still undergoing excavation, and one section is inside a shelter to preserve some spectacular mosaics. 6 panels depict more scenes from Greek mythology, with Ion, the god of endless time, in the center. Murals from the walls of this house are displayed in the Paphos Museum. The house of Dionysus is just to the north and has 500 square meters of mosaics in total. Like the other houses, they depict scenes from Greek mythology. Dionysus, the god of wine and festivals, is a frequent subject of them. You can also see a segment of the household plumbing and many common daily artifacts from around the house are displayed in the Paphos Museum.